Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to secure service accounts, right? And what are those service accounts? So before jumping on to the making sure that service accounts are safe and secure in order to protect the integrations as well as connectivity between different systems, different applications, wherever we are using those service accounts, right? So I'm going to tell you a bit context about what is service account and what are the different use cases, right? So service account is something which is going to be used for different integrations between two different systems, or maybe it is going to be used for given or giving a certain permissions to integrate particular applications, right? So for example, I wanted to integrate an application which is a third party solution provided by third party service provider, like it could be Workday system, it could be DocuSign system, it could be Salesforce or NetSuite, right? So these are the different business systems, and I wanted to integrate those systems with the different systems altogether. So I wanted to integrate Salesforce with NetSuite system. So I can simply use that service account in order to integrate it with each of those systems, each other, and we can provide set of permissions to access that integrations, right? So that is going to be a service account which is not being used by any of the individual user or individual service or individual person or a device. So that is going to be used by a service, right? So service in the cloud or a service in in-house applications, as I said, it could be any of the sales, any of these service accounts, or any of the service provided by the cloud providers, or it could be in-house developed applications as well, right? So the account that we can create and protect, so account can be created from any identity systems like Entra ID. Then if we have on-premises Active Directory, definitely we can create it from there as well, and that account can be used as a service account, right? And definitely we can push out through different permissions using API levels, as well as maybe we can use just-in-time access if in case we need to provide any additional privileges to that account in order to perform certain actions or certain tasks. And if we wanted to manage something using that account, like maybe administrative tasks or complete any administrative work, we can use that account as a particular account in order to perform that task as well, right? And we can assign certain roles as well by using RBAC, or maybe just-in-time access, or maybe PIM, which is privileged identity management, right? So those are the different ways we can manage, as well as we can provide different roles and access, right? And basis on that, we can use that account as well, right? So now let's jump on to the different ways how we can protect that account, right? So the first way is to limit down the account permissions, right? So instead of giving highly privileged permissions on that account on application level or service level or API level, we should definitely limit down those permissions on following of privilege of least privileges, right? And by using that, which is principle of least privilege, where we can assign the minimum required permissions to that service account to perform a specific task, and not everything that we can or we should or we wanted to, right? The second is going to be assign RBAC roles, and those roles has very restricted access only to the resources or the data wherever it is necessary only, and not something we wanted to provide highly privileged permissions on it. The second is use managed identities. Managed identities is something which is going to be similar to service account, and the same is going to be used as an alternative service accounts. And we can eliminate the need to manage the credentials manually, as well as it is going to be an managed identity which is directly integrated with Azure AD, as well as on-premises environments, if in case we are creating and managing from there. And we can secure down the access to those resources, and we can replace the managed identities with this kind of managed identity service accounts, right? The next is enforce multi-factor authentication, right? So now there are two ways to manage multi-factor authentication on those kind of service accounts. One is with the interactive sign-in accounts wherein end user is using that account, or end user as in it could be administrator, it could be application admin, it could be system admin, it could be IT help desk admin, right? So all of those are the different people who are going to use that account as a service account to use a particular service or application or anything that is going to be used with integration different systems, right? And the second is going to be a non-interactive service accounts where that account does not have any of the user interaction credentials. Instead, we would be using certificate-based authentication as well as application-based authentication, which has app passwords created with it. And that app passwords would be used in order to connect different services and applications together as an integration. And that application and the password is going to be used there to integrate and interact with both different systems by using that particular account and credentials, right? So we can enforce the multi-factor authentication basis on our needs, basis on our requirements. And definitely it is need to consider the different use cases. As I said, interactive sign-ins as well as non-interactive sign-ins, right? Basis on that, we can make sure it is available and we can enable that as per requirement. The next is application registration and OAuth authentication, right? So instead of using accounts or service accounts for the application access, we can use the client secrets by using application registration and client secrets and client certificates for authentication purposes, which is also called as service principal, right? So service principal is the same as well as service as the app registration, right? So both are same. There is no, or there shouldn't be the confusion between both of those, right? And it has a client secrets and then certificates or maybe client ID, right? And also we can provide and define restrictive permissions on it so that we are providing only those permissions which are really needed with the privilege, a principle of least privilege way of assigning the permissions, right? So next is implementing conditional access policies. This is also same on the different levels, similar to interactive sign-ins and non-interactive sign-ins. So on this way or on this method, we can restrict the service account usage based on the locations, then the device compliance policies, or maybe specific application only allows the access to predefined workloads wherever we wanted to allow that one, right? And even there is a way for us to block that access level on the risky applications or maybe any specific network that application is going to be using, or maybe only that network is going to be allowed instead of allowing everything and anything across the internet, right? The next method is monitor and auditing account activities. So we can use the sign-in logs as well as audit logs of that specific service accounts to see how that account is being used, whether that account is being used for suspicious activities such as sign-ins from unusual locations, excessive failed login credentials and attempts, changes to permissions and configurations, right? And this can also be protected and identified by using Defender for Identity, which is also a suite or which is also a capability of Microsoft 365 Defender suite, right? And this can also be checked and tested and used by Azure Security Center, where we can see the advanced threat detection capabilities, right? The next is secure credentials. So this is something where we can store the credentials securely, which is part of Azure, which is Azure Key Vault service, right? And which is similar to the password managers. For example, one password is the password manager where we store the passwords and credentials and everything, right? So this is also the same one, but we keep that credentials or that all of those credentials and passwords and everything in the cloud within the Azure Key Vault service, right? And also we can use it to embed the credentials into scripts, codes, and configurations, right? So we don't have to store it somewhere in the locally or on passwords, and those credentials would be embedded and those credentials would be used during the runtime of that application or scripts or maybe code whenever that code is going to be executed. The next is rotate passwords and secrets regularly. So this is for the service accounts again, right? So if we have the passwords as well as secrets, those are giving the appropriate permissions to that applications or integrations, then definitely we should change those passwords and secrets regularly. So regularly, as in it could be a scheduled date time where it is changing every 8 days, 10 days, or maybe 15 days, or maybe month, right? So it is totally based on our use case and our needs. However, we wanted to change that one, and we can make it uh, changes, and also we can use the protection on Azure AD side, where we have password protection capability to enforce the password policies to be strong if in case the people are using weak passwords, or maybe the passwords those are easy to guess, right? And the next is isolate and restrict network access. So this is in conjunction of, or this is in context of Azure side specifically. When we are using any service accounts, those service accounts can be put behind the network security group and application security group to restrict the access levels to a specific range of IP addresses as well as subnets for services accessed by that account. And then we can put in a private links to ensure traffic stays within the network in order to use and flow that network and with that account. The next is dedicated accounts. So what does that mean is whenever we are using, or whenever you are integrating any applications or service together, we definitely should avoid using the user accounts as a service accounts, right? We should not use any user's account to integrate different systems. Instead, we should specifically use a separate service account and make sure it has all the security services or security capabilities implemented on it, so that account itself remains secure and it has all the security on top of that, so that we also don't compromise on security on both systems wherever those are being integrated and used, right? The next is apply time-based access, which is kind of just-in-time access level. And this is a part of Azure Privileged Identity Management, right? And where we can give the appropriate permissions on demand or as per need basis on the requirement. And then once that requirement is done or fulfilled, then we can simply revoke that access and disable the account automatically after predefined period, right? The next is disable legacy authentication protocols. So this is very important because whenever we are simply creating any service accounts and integrating it with different systems together, so by default, it would have the legacy protocols enabled. If those are not disabled by the tenant wide, right? And from the tenant side, then all those protocols will be automatically enabled. So we need to disable all those protocols, which is IMAP, POP3, and SMTP, and those should be disabled. On top of that, we should use modern authentication whenever we are creating or whenever we are enforcing any additional method to use that account, right? And make sure that account is safe and secure. The next is disable non-interactive sign-ins whenever possible and if it is not required at all, right? So there are different two ways or two use cases, as I said earlier, interactive sign-in and non-interactive sign-ins. So now we wanted to disable interactive sign-ins as well as non-interactive sign-ins as well. So we can do that, and we can make sure that service account has only uh, the capability to log in or maybe use that account with the app service password or app passwords to integrate that with the different systems, right? And that is why we should definitely use or block the interactive sign-ins where it is going to ask someone to enter the credentials and then get into the system, right? The next is manage lifecycle and offboarding of those accounts. So here in this specific requirements or in this topic, we have different tasks to perform, which includes the regularly reviews of those access levels, and then clean up unused service accounts, So that means we need to identify those accounts first, which accounts are there created and which accounts are being used for different systems, right? Whether those accounts are active, those accounts are being interacting with different services, different applications, different platforms altogether. If yes, definitely we need to take care of that by making sure it has a security enabled intact, and then how we can protect those accounts, right? And if not, then simply we should offboard those accounts as well, right? So by decommissioning those service accounts when there is no need of those accounts, and data and access levels securely can be removed, right? And the next is use logging and analytics tools to make sure that we collect, analyze, and act on the logs wherever those logs are being collected for service accounts, like audit logs, sign-in logs, as well as any other logs. Those are triggered basis on the different activities. Maybe that account was used by someone, or try to use, or maybe try to attempt or try to log in that account from different locations altogether, from different network altogether, from different device altogether. So these are the different ways or cases where that account can be used, and that account can be protected with the different proactive measures by using logging and analytics tools over the uh, Microsoft Sentinel or any third-party SIEM tool to collect, analyze, and act upon those logs, and can be protected that service accounts, right? The next is, and I'm going to talk about a bit of checklist for the service accounts, right? So checklist is going to be something like account permissions, authentication, multi-factor authentication, then secret management, then monitoring, then legacy authentication, then conditional access and network security, right? So all of these are the checklists, I would say, which we really need to make sure those are considered and managed appropriately so that we can make sure these service accounts are safe and secure, right? So yeah, that is what I wanted to talk about in this video, and hope you will like it. Hope you will enjoy this, and hope you will learn something new. And please do watch all other videos to learn something new, and do share these videos with your friends, colleagues, and whoever needs to see and watch, right? So yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.